Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll fix that. Hi, everybody. We hang on there. We got the wrong banner on. There we go. Now we got the right one. Hi, everybody, if you're just tuning in. Thanks for hanging in there. You're listening live to the Angel Rock. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. And if you are listening, come on over to UFO Paranormal Radio's YouTube channel because we got a good show for you tonight. It's one of my favorite people. But what I will say right now, before we get started, I'll tell you a little bit about my show. If you've never tuned in before, welcome. I like to see your comments. For some reason, they don't show up on my Facebook profile if you're over there watching the show. That's why I say always come on over to YouTube or the UFO Paranormal Facebook page. We can see them there. Also, I am a Canadian psychic medium. I'm also a crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher, and mentor, and I am a registered nurse. My show, I say I cover all aspects of the supernatural, but we're kind of evolving here. And I'm changing the definition, if you will, to I'm having people from all walks of life through whatever they're doing, either professionally or extracurricularly, that it's their passion and they're making a positive change for humanity. And you know what? We just have a bunch of conversations on this show. That's why I say join in the conversation here because we love to make you part of it and you're part of our family. Here's one of our regular supporters of both of our shows, Dave Petrella. Now, hi, Dave. I want to introduce our guest to you. Sorry, I'm trying to clean my glasses and talk at the same time here. So I know you know her if you're a fan of UPRN, a little bit about her, and then I'll introduce her formally. It's Michelle Desrochers, and she's professionally and actively been researching the unexplained and successfully working in media for the past 18 years. With her area of study focused primarily on malevolent hauntings and demonic attachments, she's considered one of Canada's and North America's leading researchers. She's highly versed in many subject matters within her field, and yes, she is, and has expanded her knowledge to include UFO studies cryptozoology, folklore, and legends, and anything else that is deemed out of this world. Try and say that 3 times fast. As an international public figure, she's often called upon by the media for paranormal consultations, for television and other related media, and books months in advance for appearances. She is co-producer to the very popular radio show right here on UPRN Wednesdays and Thursday evenings, The Outer Realm, to which she co-hosts with her friend and teammate Amelia Pisano, and The Gray Zone Uncensored, that she co-hosts with friend and producer Joe Montaldo, who is also the owner of this network. And I always give him a shout out and say thank you to him. So thanks, Joe. She has a passion for old world and ancient history and architecture, to which she is always and continues to excel in. Combined with her love of travel, not only did it lead her on an incredible journey. Sorry, I'm losing my place here. Sorry, I'll start over. It led her on an incredible journey of exploration into the locations that she has always dreamed of visiting. But it opened doors to venture into locations that others have been denied access to. She considers herself an explorer of all that would be deemed otherworldly. She credits her multitude of fans within the international community, which continue to feed her drive for answers. She lives in a haunted manor house and coexists nicely with the many spirits that dwell within its walls. And I have seen examples of this when we've done live panels. Welcome, Michelle. What a bio. I had to read
Thank
every
you.
word. We couldn't miss
Oh, you didn't
anything.
have to. That's the short one. People
It's
do
a
the
short one.
bios for me, and I'm just like, well, then.
And
Thank you. Thank you.
look who's tuning in.
Oh, I know who's
Speaking
tuning
of
in. He's going to
Joe.
harass me through this whole show.
Well, you know, he's
Oh,
going to harass us. That's our Joe, right? He
that's
likes to
okay.
tease us. God, where do we start? You know where I am going to start? I'm going to start with you where I start with everybody. So, how did this all start for you? How did it all start?
Um, well, I mean, I
The
think
big question, right? Not a short answer.
it did, yeah. I mean, I've always sort of been in tune to, I've had paranormal experiences
Hmm.
from the time I was a child, like most kids, you see dead
Right.
people or you just, you have those experiences. And I was just fortunate enough that my mother especially
Hmm.
basically she sort of embraced it. She didn't discourage it by any means. She just let it
Okay.
go, and
Hmm.
from that point on, like my father was a different tune because he was just sort of like, no, he doesn't harass me.
I know,
But
I had to highlight it.
you know, no, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. But yeah, so realistically, my father was just sort of not a believer. I found out later in years he was, and he had a lot of experiences, but he just wasn't going to give it to me as an adolescent.
Right.
But I think from that point on, you know, at the time I'd gotten married and I had kids, and I was just like, I didn't like the mix of the two. So I just shut it off. I just ignored it. And then around 2004, it sort of found me, and I slowly got pulled into the field. But, you know, we shut off. You think that, oh, out of sight, out of mind, but you don't bank on the
Yeah.
fact that your kids see everything. And then you just got to
Yes.
switch back on because you want to make sure, you know, that
What are
nobody
they
gets in
saying?
harm's way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the gist of it. It was never an intention to get into it professionally. It was never an interest to get into it professionally. Just the individual I was working with at the time. I guess media just sort of liked it. And, you know, even though when I ceased working with that person, I just went on my own. But media was definitely nothing I was interested in, but it always found me. And for me, it was just a way that people could find me if they needed me,
Right.
because I just found my niche in malevolent hauntings, and I just seemed to do really well at helping people with it, and sort of stuck with it.
Yes, you are, because I tell a lot of people, because we've been on Paranormal Survivor, which you consult on. I know you do quite most of the episodes, if not almost all of them. And we didn't know you at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember when we talked to the producer, it was one of their contact papers for the people for the producers, and they were just getting ready to wrap up the season about 5 years prior to today. And I happened to contact this girl. She was just an angel. And she said, well, you know, we don't have a big budget for the show. And, you know, do you think you could be in the Toronto area? We should mention we're both from Canada, obviously. We're
Right.
broadcasting out of New Orleans, Louisiana. I forgot to mention that. And
Right.
so I said, well, I can see if there's a seat sale, because I'm about 20 hours away by car, because you have to drive around the lakes to get to the Toronto area. I'm in Thunder Bay. And I said, well, I'll see if I could find a seat sale. And she said, but just tell me all about your story. So as I started telling her, she said, you know, I'm going to go talk to the producer. She said, maybe we could help you like with a hotel room or a dinner or something. And she calls me back 10 minutes later. We're paying for everything.
Nice.
We're paying for everything. Right. And then
Right.
we
They're
got down
really
there. But
good.
you consulted on the episode. And you know what? You hit the nail on the head a lot. And people think that we talk, all of us, like we had no idea what was going to be in the episode until, like, say somebody sees it for the first time. But you really hit the nail on the head. So how
Thank
does that
you.
work for you? Do you like just watch the episodes and then pick up
No,
intuitively, or?
no, we go. I no. Basically, all I ask for, because I have to consult on so many
Yes.
different segments, along with, you know, my compadres, Katie Turner and Linda Carino. And it was great because season 5, we all got to film here at the house, actually.
Oh,
I think we did, yeah,
nice.
all of season 5, I think, was filmed here. So we had a lot of
Excuse me.
fun. You know, you become very, very close with them. But I usually
Yeah.
say, no, you know what? I'd like just to have a general script. Like, I just want to
Yeah.
look at what the situation is, because if you don't know, you can't comment. And then you spend hours, you know, they'll come in and say, okay, you're going to spend the next, you know, 3-4 hours and on case, let's say 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, like there might be, you know, 10 different ones, and you're giving 5 answers for every, you know, segment, basically. And there's a whole pile of questions for every segment. I might have 20 or 30 questions for each segment. So it does get to be, it is a lot of time. But for me, it's just, I find it, I just boom, 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 because it's all stuff I already know.
Right.
So a lot of the
So
questions are very generic.
okay, so you don't even get to see the episode then. You just, like you said, get a bunch of questions. And
The
mind you, that's a
episodes
cool,
haven't even been put together yet. Sorry.
oh,
Like
I was gonna
film.
say that's kind of a cool way to do it though, because you know, knowing you now the way, you know, with consulting on so many paranormal episodes, you know, when we do the panels and stuff, you know, I don't know, I find for myself, and I already know what you're going to say, the least amount of info you have, the better, right? And you know the answers to these questions. So it just sort of, it comes, doesn't it? You can just sort of feel it,
does.
can't you?
It's
Yeah.
either natural or it isn't. I mean, I know by the time it gets to me, the only people that have done any filming are the
Mm-hmm.
people with the stories. And just to be clear, because I mean, I did 4 out of the 5 seasons,
Mm-hmm.
and people think they're just made up stories. They're not made up stories at
Mm-hmm.
all. These are actually real people who've gone
Mm-hmm.
through real, pretty terrifying situations.
Yeah.
It's not easy to come out of an oppressed situation like that. I don't even like to say situation. It's a nightmare for a lot of people. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
families
Yeah, it
break up.
is.
A lot of
Yep.
families end up having to go into counseling because you're dealing with parents who maybe don't know how to protect their children. They feel helpless. It's just, there's a lot of involved in that. So these are real stories. I get a little bit, perturbed when I see people say, oh, these are just made up. No, they're not made up, man. And if it ever
Mm-hmm.
happens to you, I hope nobody says that about what you're going through. Because
I've been through that myself. Mm-hmm.
yeah, well, you know what? It deters people from coming forward with their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you don't want to, that's fine. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many people and families I've worked with in the last 2 decades. And if they come to me with a story and they want, some people say, look, I would love to tell my story. They find it very therapeutic. They hope
Mm-hmm.
that somebody watching can learn from their experience.
Yes.
You just don't get paid to come forward and tell your stories, people. It's not like this is a money grab or anything,
No, it's not.
So, it's really difficult, and it's really brave for some of these people to come forward and say, hey, you know what, this is what happened to us, because they're exposing their lives. They're giving you a glimpse into
Mm-hmm.
everything they went through. It's a very personal experience.
It is. And so I guess I gotta, and I, some of these answers I know, but I know people watching will want to know. I want to give a shout out to Shannon Kerr. She says, hello, ladies. So welcome, Shannon. You know what? Like you said, it's very personal, and I love that you're able to help people. But was there like an experience that got you into looking at these really dark type of entities? Because there's not a lot of people that there's a lot of people, yes, that work in the paranormal field, but to provide the aftercare and to help people, and you stay in touch with these people, I know you do, and I don't find that there's a lot of people like you that do what you're doing. So was it? And if I ask anything that's too personal, please let me know. I know you say you're an open book, but
Yeah,
just in case.
yeah.
But was there an experience that got you interested, or?
My own, actually, because mind you, knowing what I know now, I tend to question exactly what it was, but I went
Mm-hmm.
through my own attachment period, and you
Mm-hmm.
know I come to learn that whatever it was generational. And now
Mm-hmm.
that, studying the field of abductions and experiencers and things like that, I'm sort of like,
Mm-hmm.
because I've had extraterrestrial experiences as well, and now I'm starting to think they may have been one and the same.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I was projecting a lot of energy too, because I've always been really strong that way in my abilities. So I've always been able to work with energies. I remember my grandfather used to say, oh no, we're energy movers. You can definitely do things like that. And, it seemed to everybody in the family seemed to take it up one step, and then I took it way out.
Mm-hmm.
And so energy for me is a very easy thing to work with. So I'm sure it was times I was a bit agitated. It was like full blown poltergeist, off goes the roof of the house sort of thing. So, back then, I'm going to age myself a little bit. There wasn't internet. So I had to do it the old fashioned way, and I had to go to the library, and
All of us, yeah, I didn't have it.
I did, right. We all
I
had to do
didn't
that.
either.
And for me, the closest thing I could find to doing any kind of cleansings or clearings was actually books on witchcraft and learning how to use
Yes.
sage, and everything doesn't really shut up, Wayne.
I saw that.
But anyway, just clearing, and I learned early on that the key to everything was mindset. I learned that I
Yes.
was 18 years old, and I went, it's all about what I do here, whether I project it, if I can not control it, because you can't control malevolent things or extraterrestrials, but you can control the outcome. a lot of the times. So I learned at that point. Uh, and then I just, I don't know. People gravitated to me when I went public. People
Mm-hmm.
gravitated to me, and I remember one of the first times of being on television, the amount of emails I got, and I was stories of families
Mm-hmm.
having really difficult times, and it was mind blowing to me. I didn't realize at that time, because there's no way I would have, just how many
Yeah.
people were suffering and I had absolutely no clue what to do, so I think that's what probably made me go a little bit further. And you're not dealing with, like I always say, there's great paranormal groups out there. There's some really good paranormal groups out
Mm-hmm.
there. I'm well known for researching. I don't come out and say, no,
Right.
I'm well known for being a paranormal researcher. No, I'm a good researcher, but I can research
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things. And there's a lot of people more phenomenal at it than I am. Where I think I differ is that I don't go to somebody with the attitude of, oh, wow, well, it's a good thing I'm here to help you. I
Mm-hmm.
go at it with a different outlook. It's like, thank you for, entrusting yourselves to me. And thank
Mm-hmm.
you for trusting me to do this for you. And let me take the weight for a while. Just relax and just let me do this. And I mean, some of these situations, because you have to work with the mindset, like at one point I had a 1.5 year waiting list for me to be there in person. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
work with people online and say, I need you to do this or this or this or this. 9 times out of 10, believe it or not, people were practically home free by the time I was ready to see them.
Mm-hmm.
There's just maybe, I would say maybe 20% of the time where I really had to go back and be on site with somebody. Just from educating people and taking the time to educate them, they started realizing, wait a minute, I do have control over this. I can make this happen. It was so simple. You can't just go into somebody's house with recorders and this, that, and whatnot. And it's not about what you're going to catch. Like when I was working with people from different various backgrounds, like religious
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds, if a certain, like the Catholics, for example, they want everything possible. Then you go in and you get it. Other religious people with religious backgrounds, they weren't as strict. They're just like, no, okay, what's going on? Okay, we're going to go in and we're going to do this. We're going to take your word for it. Sometimes the priests have had their own experiences,
Mm-hmm.
but I just can't. I don't even bother investigating. I stopped investigating. I got so many people that needed me to come in. I knew just from being seasoned enough, from doing enough of them, from what they told me, I didn't need to go in there and pay attention to something that these people don't want to pay attention to. They don't want to
Mm-hmm.
communicate with this thing. They want it gone. Why would I go communicate with it? It's an
Mm-hmm.
invitation.
Absolutely. Because I am this Wayne, actually I have to agree with what Wayne wrote. He said you've always been very humble in the way in which you approach any case or situation. And you are, Michelle, you really, really are. Because I think we all have this, myself included, we all have this preconceived notion because somebody's been on TV that they're going to have this ego about them. And you're very humble, very down to earth, and
Thank
but
you.
would you say though, that kind of goes with mindset, with energy? We've talked about, it's a little bit of a cheat because we've had many of these chats on paranormal.
Yeah.
When we get the group together online here and we do a show, but whenever you said this yourself, right? Whenever you might want to, your head gets a little bit swollen, right? There's spirit right to give you a jab and knock you right
Oh
back on
yeah.
your ass again, right? You
Doesn't
have to be humble.
happen. Oh yeah.
Because I
It's
was gonna, oh, go ahead.
no. I wasn't saying
I'll
anything. I was just agreeing with you. Yeah.
Okay, well, what I was going to say, you know what, that's the beautiful thing, because that's really where I discovered my gifts that have been around me my whole life with going through this. But I think you said something very powerful, is by teaching people, you empower them, because we all have the ability and the strength to do this if we can be built up. Or like you said, I love what you said there, let me take the weight for you a little bit to give you a bit of a break here. People need that, because there's also a very fine line between fear and if you will, dominion, having that strength, standing up, knowing that as a human being on this planet, we have the right, not cocky or arrogant, but the strength and, mindset to be able to stand up to whatever's here. Because Shannon asked a question, which I thought was great. She said, Michelle, have you ever been in a situation that outright terrified you?
Not in the way you think. I've been to some amazing places throughout my life. Most haunted forest in the world, Hoyabatsu
I was
Forest.
thinking about that with the
Yeah,
trolls. I think you talked about that on air, right?
I'm happy to talk about it. Absolutely.
I'd love to hear it
The
again.
answer to this question, not in the way you think. Younger days of researching, going to cases, you get a little bit confident, shall we say. And,
Yes.
and this was one of the stories that was told by a woman whom we helped on, I think it was season 1 of Survivor. And I came in as the researcher to back up her story. But because there were 2 locations infected, they had to pull them into one. And they really made it seem like I abandoned this poor woman, when realistically it was the other family that just didn't want us to come back. So she was never abandoned. She was actually cleared the first night. But you get a little bit confident or overconfident, and you think to yourself, I think I did everything right on this. And you don't think beyond that. You don't think, however, that your people, your family can be affected, by people you love can be affected. And my daughter was the one who actually got affected. Oh yeah, she actually lost her sight. blind as a bat for about a month, because we were supposed to go back. Oh yeah, she went through every test imaginable, psych tests, obviously, because if you're under enough stress or going through something, you can physically do that. The brain's a funny thing. So she went to see psychiatrists, psychologists. We sent her to eye specialists, optometrists. She had pictures taken of the inside of her eyes, behind, CAT scans, MRI, you name it. It was all done. And basically, we were told by the family they did not want us to return. They, when you're dealing with malevolent hauntings, these things will sometimes go quiet. They give you a false sense of security, or they'll go full blown in your face just to make you back off, which is what happened with them. But they thought they had it under control. We cleared the majority of the building. And when we left, we saw there was a whole other section to the building that we weren't given access to. And we looked and we went, there's where everything went. So anyway, it was never my intention to go back, but not because we weren't willing, but because it was the family's decision to have us not go back. So, I basically just tapped into this energy, and I said, fix this. Seriously, like, fix this, or I'm coming back no matter what. I'll take you out, like, piece by piece, man. And
this is my kid. Yeah.
Die all over again, but it communicated, and it said, okay, it said, fine, no problem, but it goes, stay away. Wasn't a hard, people are like, oh, you made a deal with the devil. No, not really, because we'd already arranged that the family didn't want us to come back. There was no deal, right? There was no deal. But at that point, it was like, no problem.
I wasn't really coming back anyway.
Right. And literally by the next, like, literally by within a few hours, actually, she was just like, I can see. Her eyes were never the same again, though. That's the thing. They were never the same again. Whether they were associated or not, it was enough to humble you. I mean, it really humbled me, and it took me down a few notches. And I realized that I could go in and do everything right. I could take the precautions. I could, the mindset can be right. But you can't bank on everything that goes on around you. But I've learned.
So right.
Now, I can assure you it would not happen twice.
You're so right about that, because you're right. I consider, or I guess if people look into titles, I've used the title light worker before, and I've met many that have not dealt with the dark things you and I have, because I've looked things right in the face, and I kept saying, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this. And my mentor I was working with the Akashic Records said, sometimes people that are doing kind of the work that you're doing, sometimes they're meant to bring light to these dark situations.
Right.
But what I find is it's mostly teaching. And the reason I'm sharing this is to back up what you said. You know, you get these people that are very arrogant and very cocky going in and taunting. And I used to get people saying to me, you just send that over to my house and I'll just kick it, you know what? And I used to say to them, and I still say it to this day, don't ever say that, because these things don't listen to you. Plus they don't go after things like you just said, like yourself, like if you're able to manage yourself. Excuse me, stop please. My German Shepherd.
2 cents worth, co-host.
Yes, but yes, co-host, she usually jumps up here, or the cat. But I was going to say, but what they go after, like you said, your family members, they go after your health, they'll go after things you can't control, or that you have. And I always say that you're just asking for an invitation when you taunt things like that, or you say things like that, because that, to me, that's just arrogance and cockiness.
It is. And I think you're right on that. I think people don't really, you don't think about consequences like that. I really didn't at the time, because I thought I had taken all the necessary precautions. You know, people will say to me now, they'll ask, you know, well, you have, you know, you've been through all of this with your own attachments, so on and so forth. You've been through all of this stuff. And it's like, I won't be victimized twice. You had your shot. And now I am just ruthless with it. Respectful, but I am ruthless. Enter my space. There should be a whole other game, as it's happened. It seems that whenever you go to a location, they know you're coming. They watch the people
always
in the house. Yeah, they know. I've had situations, you know, I had a family I was helping in Toronto. And when I got there, you know, they'd been through so much. The priest would come in and they would just watch things fly off the fridge and things like that. And it just insanity. So I basically, when I got to there, she opened the door, she dropped to the ground and she just hung on to me. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Oh yeah. It was, you realize at that point, you really are a lifeline for people. But before I went that day, I was just getting myself ready to go and getting, you know, was getting dressed and such. And this thing was notorious for the typical knocking 3 times. And it was knocked on my bedside table. And I just sat there and I looked up in the mirror, kept doing what I was doing. And I just walked out of my ensuite and I grabbed my purse and I said, I'll see you in an hour, mister. And I walked out and that was
Good
it.
for you.
And that was the end of it. And he was there. He was there, sure enough, when I got there, because I record my interviews and all you hear is just all this growling going on in the background. I'm like, that's, you know, relentless. This thing was relentless. But in the
they
end,
like to, but it's a fine line, like I said, between fear and dominion. Like Dell, who's on the network too, most people have seen him here, that here's I'm having, he's got the delicious recipe, but he's the one I went through this stuff in our house. He was thrown 15 feet across the kitchen. And he didn't even tell me about it. It happened. He was upstairs making a sandwich, and Kitty, and he had the cut all over his arm. I asked him, and he goes, "Well, I was bending down to grab some mustard. It was about 3:00 in the morning." And he said, all of a sudden, I was flying across the kitchen and landed into the counter, like there was, you know, where the sharp edge of the counter. And he goes, but I thought maybe I'd gotten shocked or something. He's still a skeptic to this day. Well, you know Dell, so you know what he's like.
I know.
So
it's
there
like,
he is with his electrical
tester.
And it's like, dude, there's nobody there. The fridge is still working. It's a new fridge. You didn't get shocked. And now he'll believe it. But, you know, there's some things you just got to see to believe. Like I said, he's such a skeptic and he's still learning. Believe me, I had a conversation with him about fairies like about 6 months ago. And I said to him, had you told me like 13 years ago, I'd be having a conversation about fairies with you, I would have probably fallen off this bed right here, because it's just what happens, right? So, well, you know Dell. If you know Dell, you know what he's like.
True.
So, and he's such a skeptic. And like in the episode, the only thing I can say that they truly showed was true. And I'm not saying it with any disrespect, because I'm grateful they shared our story. Because you're right, Michelle. I said this so many times too. It's not like you can stand in the grocery line and talk about these experiences. Yet how many people are having them? Like you said, you were booked for 1.5 years. Like even now, I think we're with more and more collectively, energetically, what's going on in the world. I don't know. Do you find that you're busier right now?
I've been busy for so long. I don't even know. I've always been really busy.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I think we probably do, I don't know, 30. It sounds really bad, but we do 30 people a week. It just sounds terrible, but we
I'm
really
not
do.
laughing at the people, just so it's not.
But it's all done like remotely now, so it's a lot
Right.
easier. You go in with energy; it's a lot easier to fight
Yep.
energy. It's just a no-brainer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but we find because of the state of the world and people are depressed, people
Yes.
are struggling. There's just so much going on that's actually affecting everyone. I mean, everyone just
Yes.
gets affected differently. And I think maybe it makes them targets. Maybe they just have more time at home. Maybe they have addiction issues because there's more time at
Mm-hmm.
home. They're getting angrier. It's just a whole melee of things.
Mm-hmm.
Worry, you name it. Stress does crazy things.
It sure does.
And it's not like I want to be clear on something. It's not like every time someone comes to me and says, "Oh, I have something." Believe me, I would say 30% of the time there's nothing there at all. Maybe even 40% now because we're on top of everything. The waiting list isn't so long anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might be waiting a month or two at the most. But you have people because of everything they're going through, have some major psychokinesis going on. So they're projecting energy all over the place. And what they don't realize is that you could hear footsteps going. You can have cupboard doors opening and closing, but you're projecting that energy. It seems to be easier for people to think that there's some crazy entity walking around. It's
Mm-hmm.
easier to believe that than it is for them to believe that they're powerful people projecting out energy.
Can we talk about that? We got a ton of comments and questions I want to get
Yeah,
to,
of
but can
course.
we talk about that? Because I think that's important for people to understand, because that's part of my message I teach people. As human beings,
Mm.
we are so much more powerful and incredibly capable of so many things we've been told
Mm.
are never possible, like telekinesis.
That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
People would think, oh, it's like poltergeist activity. It really is. But you're
Mm-hmm.
projecting that energy, you're putting
Mm-hmm.
that out. And I've seen people do some unbelievable things. My daughter used to do it going through, puberty. She would call me
Oh.
and she'd say, "Oh, there's a statue," because I had the statue that I just had on the table. It was pretty heavy.
Mm-hmm.
It's moving across the table by itself. Well, I know we're not haunted, so knock it off. I know that's you, little girl. So
Yeah.
stop it. And she'd say,
Yeah.
"What?" Oh yeah. So she'd calm herself down, and then
Mm-hmm.
the activity in the house would stop. Things would just start going on. And we did have a spirit in that house as well,
Mm-hmm.
until he was moved along and he was depressed. We can always tell when he was around because then she would get depressed and then she would start projecting
Wow.
and we'd be just like, okay, here we go. So projection, yes, we're powerful people. We're powerful as energies. Remember, people, we're just soul energy having a human experience. At the end of the day, we are very powerful. And some of us are able to project beyond the physical.
Or anger. I find
Anger's a
anger is
big
a
one.
really powerful
That's a big one.
emotion.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Ex-
Because
so sick.
so much movement with it, right?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Watch me go. So yes. But it's very common for young girls, especially going through puberty,
Yes.
or women going through menopause. Those seem to
Interesting.
be, not that young guys can't do it or guys can't do it, but women were just emotional creatures. So
Yes.
we just project, differently.
Especially a teenage girl, and we've all been there ourselves as females,
Oh
but going through
yes.
puberty, I mean, you're up, you're down, you're all over and the
Oh,
same
I'm
thing really
sure
with
my
menopause.
parents went through a heck of a whirlwind. I'm sure of it. So,
I
you
always
know.
said I didn't want any daughters, and I got what I wished for. I got boys.
Oh, they could project just as much, believe you
I
me.
know. Well,
Oh,
especially both of my boys. And that's an interesting thing too, because when I find as parents that we're, very intuitive or aware of the gifts that we have, I don't know if it's one half of one or the other, but I find that children, any parent I've ever asked that has gifts, well, what about your kids? Right away. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Or my son with autism, he wasn't even verbal till he was about 6 or 7. But when I had somebody come to my house, that was the only person that came at the beginning of all this paranormal stuff to clear the house.
Right.
And she must have been meant to come, because when she came, I did a bit of research. A friend had recommended her, and I found out I used to work with her mom. Her mom was a secretary at, I used to work for something called VON, or Victorian Order of Nurses. And I
Right.
wasn't aware her mom had just passed. So she came up the door and said, my guides and my angels have told me to come here with everything I have, that I'm in for the fight of my life. So we just sat and talked for about 45 minutes, and I told her how much I'd loved her mom. And she was really honest. She said she was still grieving her mom and what have you. But she met my son with autism. And it's hard for people with autism usually to have eye contact. That was okay with her because they had a whole conversation. He wasn't even looking at her. They're laughing and giggling, but there were no words. And
Mm-hmm.
she was telling me all kinds of things that were going on with my son. I knew she was the real deal, because
Right.
for my son to be laughing and interacting and what have you. But my whole point is with the energy, like,
Mm-hmm.
he's all over the place. When it doesn't matter what sex you are, if you don't have a communication system, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to
Yeah.
see a lot of behavior and what have you. Sorry,
Oh,
getting off topic here,
no, not
but
at all. We're right in tune. We're right in tune. So,
so Shannon asked, because I wanted to ask you about that, because I remember you talking about this, and it was so fascinating. And it was about I think it was when you were in the forest, the haunted forest in Croatia. Wasn't the trolls there or something? You said you saw all kinds of crazy things in that one forest.
it was actually the Hoyabachi Forest in Romania, which
Oh,
is
Romania. Right.
is
Okay.
yeah, it is. It was at the time, and I think it still may be considered to be the most haunted forest in the world.
Wow.
Some believe it's a suicide forest in Japan, but I think it just dropped down there
Hmm.
after I think Romania finally bumped itself up there with some experiences. But it was an interesting experience because I didn't know a lot about it going in.
Hmm.
Um, the girls that I was with are not only friends, but they're also team members. And Adriana's Romanian, so it's like, oh, we're gonna go over here. Perfect. We went in with a little bit of equipment. I mean, the whole trip, wasn't just to research. It was just to, you know, that was my this is what I do when I go on vacation. It doesn't matter where I am. I really like to try to have a little bit of that anyway. So we went in there and. Sorry, I'm just going to get rid of a bot for you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Starting early. Um,
Yeah.
we could hear this droning sound in the background because we had about, probably a good 4 kilometer hike up into the mountain or into the forest. And people don't realize there's also 2 circles, but you have to get the right one. So we had to,
Okay.
it took us a couple of days to realize where we had to be to go into the right one. And there was this droning sound, which was very strange to hear going on in the background when you're in the middle of a forest on top of a mountain. You're trying to think, where is this coming from? And it was constant in the background. All the trees are bent out of shape, like they're in just crazy shapes, and like just really, just craziness. Just Google the Hoyabachi Forest or the Haunted Forest Romania. You'll find it. It's just amazing, and no wildlife. Just we weren't any
Strange.
birds. No, there were no birds. There were no small animals. If there were big animals, they probably would have been way out. They wouldn't have been anywhere near the circle. I think again, it's an energy thing. Insects. There were insects, things like that. But it
Hmm.
was just different. So had a little nap. Had a little nap. During the day, we went early enough. I wanted to get my bearings, so you just lay there quietly and you just sort of feel what's going on. And the place had a bit of a vibration to it. But it was so many experiences that happened that night. I can't even begin to tell you how many experiences we had that night. And it was on the night of a supermoon, and people like, oh, you just want to be there for all the energy. I'm like, no, I just want to see my way out in the middle of
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
night. As it's a
People
four
don't realize
kilometer
how
hike
black,
back out.
yeah, how
Yeah,
black it is when you
it
are
is.
at, like, even at
It
camp at
is.
the cottage, it's black, like
It
no light.
is.
Hmm.
It is. And I'll tell you though, that moon came out and lit up the whole, you could see the whole circle was
Oh.
white. It was just like daylight in there. We're just like, this is so freaking weird. So Adriana was going around doing some voice recordings, EVPs. There's 6 entrances in, and we had some little experiences throughout the day. One looked like could have been an apparition, just because it was this like little gypsy man in a horse and cart, and
cool.
We're out on a mountain. We're like, how'd you get here?
Yeah.
And he went through one entrance, out the other, and we looked for him and we couldn't see him as he was just like, okay, whatever. That's crazy. But the voice recordings are unbelievable. They were really unbelievable, the spirits coming through trying to warn us to get out of there. And
wow.
At one point there was this big growl that came through. Now there were the 3 of us, and there was a friend at the time from the UK was there, and he was really, really skeptical. So we're like, perfect. That's just what we want. We want a skeptical guy. That's awesome. And a big growl came through, and from that point, the spirits were trying to get us out. And then the skeptical guy says, I don't think that's supposed to happen. And we turned around, and it looked like, bear in mind, there's no wind. There was nothing. It was just a hot summer evening. And it almost looked like somebody was stepping over the tree line, because the trees are coming down, and not drastic, but they were coming down, sloping down. And we're just like, and then the box says, go now, run. And I'm like, don't run from anywhere. Thank you. However, I know when I'm getting my butt handed to me, I will gracefully make an exit.
Yeah.
To which we did. And, it was out of respect. We were out of our element, because this is something new for us.
Right.
Researching, and you have to be respectful. The spirits are probably taking a bit of a chance and trying to tell you there's something there. Anyway, we went back to the hotel that night. State-of-the-art hotel, by the way. You don't even get power in the room till you slide your card in a slot in the wall, and it turns everything on. Wow. So when the electrical starts going a bit crazy, the phone is ringing, and this is like probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and you answer, there's nobody there. And I think on one of the shows, I think it was Hotel Paranormal, where they wanted that story. I said, it's already been covered. But they did the part where it was from the hotel room onward, and what happened when we got back to Canada. So in one clip that we showed, because I just had Melissa, I said, just run the camera. Let's just see what happens. Because we could hear things walking at the end of the bed, like half the night. And they were having issues upstairs also. I mean, all night there were things happening, and I was just happy to have Wi-Fi on my phone going. I always have like a million messages. So it takes me a while to get through them, right? So,
right.
And so Melissa's phone was ringing, and she's like, "Are you seeing this right now?" I'm like, I don't care, So anyway, it followed back to Canada. I didn't have any issues. The girls had issues. The girls for years had issues with the phones going again, and almost like it was just extending its reach and just letting them know we're here, and that's the way it goes. We know where you are.
Well, they don't forget you. They don't forget your name. They don't forget who you are. Like you said, they know when you're coming. Yes. Yeah, and that's the thing people I find have a hard time understanding is people will, come to me, I'll do a reading or some energy healing, and, well, do you have an office, or like, do you do it out of your home? No. Well, how can that be? And it's like, you don't need to. Once you start looking into energy and understanding it, and then usually if somebody's a little bit scientific, I'll say start looking into like quantum physics, or there's been so many studies on this to prove it. And then as a last resort, I haven't had time in the last year and a half, but once in a while when I have time, I go online live, and I just, we do a little bit of teaching. I do 1-question readings, and there's people halfway across the world. So I pointed this out to this person, and I said, remember, you were there. I said, there was somebody, I think it was from Italy or somewhere. And I said, there is no space, distance, or time on the other side, right? But I guess as our human brains, it's hard for us to kind of wrap our minds around it.
I think so. I think so. I mean, they're not bound by time or space by any means.
Mm-mm.
But we did come to find out that there was a no-fly zone over the forest. And
Really?
that, yeah, we truly believe there's a portal there for sure. You could hear it. I think that droning sound was
That
probably
I was
what it
just
was.
going to ask you, what was that? Was
I,
it energy, do you think, or?
yeah, I think it was. It was just like a droning sound that was constantly in the background. You know, it's known as Romania's Bermuda Triangle, and it was named Hoyabatsu
Interesting.
after a shepherd who went missing with something like 500 sheep. It was really crazy
I think I
back
did
there.
hear about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
all the sheep
back in
went
the
missing.
day. Yeah, and then a little girl actually went missing, and it was an odd case because she actually went missing. 5 years later, came back, still 5 years old, but not right. Her mind was just gone. Like she was not right at all. Still had a little dolly.
Wow.
So, do I think it's a portal? Yes. Yes, I absolutely do think it was a portal for sure, without a doubt. People see UFOs over top of the mountain all the time.
I
That's a great thing.
remember. Go ahead, sorry.
It's a great thing about camera phones now. Everybody catches them.
I remember that from Nuke's top five. As soon as you said about the, sorry, my mind goes a million miles a minute here, because I popped that in there because it was a woman that spoke Romanian, but English, and I think she was from the US, and she was visiting, and she went in that forest by herself, and she was
Mhm.
super afraid. She was talking about the shepherd missing the sheep,
Yep.
and behind her, she didn't see it. There was something in it. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps. In a cape, and it was following her. She didn't see it till after she reviewed the footage,
That's
and
true.
people told her, yeah, she was crazy to go in there alone, and she did go in alone.
You know what? It's one of those things. I think Ghost Adventures went in there and had like a miserable experience. We were like 3 days behind them actually,
Mm-hmm.
which was kind of funny
Yeah.
for the timing of everything. But before that, Destination Truth filmed there twice,
Mm-hmm.
and it was actually the one of the professors and his team from the University of Cluj, which is where the forest is located in the area that it's located in Romania, and they did all the recording there. People have like horrific experiences in there. I can't complain. I got off like I'm having the freaking time of my life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it they don't want you there. That's it. We were followed the whole way out. We could just hear crunching in the leaves and things like that. We knew there was a huge orb right in the middle of the trail. I don't put a lot of merit. Like I won't say I don't put a lot of merit into orbs. There are true spirit orbs, but
Mm-hmm.
when you're in the middle of the woods on a hot night, you're kind of like, you know what? It could be pollen. It could be anything, but except for the fact that there's only one, and it was big, and it was just hovering over the trail on our way out, you know. So it's like,
Wow.
well, that's a cool looking thing, isn't it? I just don't give it to them. I'm respectful. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Like I
it's
said,
acting
that
up
was,
in the room. I'm on my cell phone, internet.
well, but you have a point there, because, like I said, again, there's a fine line between fear and standing in your knowledge and strength without being aggressive, but being firm. Because I remember for the longest time, that's why I became a researcher, not like how you research, but I was doing this 18, 20 hours a day, talking to people. I had to find out what is causing this. And you know what I realized? It had to come from within. And I think the reason why this happened was I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. I don't think Del would be doing what he's doing today had we not been through that experience. So I don't look back on it in anger. But when something can pick up a 170-pound man and throw it around like a rag doll,
Yeah.
that's where you kind of, but like you
Because
said,
it's all
once you,
energy.
exactly. But
It's
once you
all
start,
energy. You can't
mm-hmm,
gauge power of just energy. I mean, God, I've
mm-hmm.
seen that like I don't know how many times.
Wayne, it's a fine line between a hero and a fool.
It's true. He's not wrong. He's not
That's
wrong.
true. That's true.
It's like you don't go poke the tiger in the cage, you know.
Well, no, that's true. But
Mm,
like I said,
mm.
I think it comes with respect, is the word, respect, right? Knowing to stand your ground, knowing when to leave. Like you said, I don't run from anything, but I was I'm going to respect that I was told to leave now.
That's what it was. I'm like, all right. I don't
I hear
run,
you.
but
Mm-hmm.
I will leave for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We took our time. We didn't hightail it out of there by any means. We just,
Mm-hmm.
you cut your losses, you go, because we had a very strong presence with us the entire time. I could feel it at my back, and I had it, it's like, okay, it's curious. I'm just going to be respectful, leave it there. And that's how it went. And it really wasn't that bad. But after a while, it was kind of like we were playing with, or, communicating with all these spirits, and we had baby bear behind us. And then all of a sudden mama bear comes over. It's like, shit, there's a bigger one.
Okay. I gotcha.
This is not going to end well if we just don't go. And when the spirits are like, go now, run. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We got it. And we did. And it had a long reach, but I had all kinds of paranormal experiences in Romania. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times I had my name called while I was there. One, it was like 7:00 or 7:30 in the freaking morning. We were in Bran, which is, most people know Bran Castle, while we were in a little villa not far from the castle. And it was like, Melissa and I were bunkies, and she sleeps like a rock. Anybody who knows her will laugh and say, because a herd of elephants could go through and Melissa will not wake up. Right. Seriously, you could tip her right out of bed and she still won't wake up. So, I wake up, it's like right in my ear. It was like, just like that. I was like, yes. Freaking hell, and I look right at Melissa, because I'm like throw a pillow at her or something, because I'm thinking, what are you waking me up at this like inhumane hour for? And she was out. She was just out cold. So I'm just like, all right, I get it. Hello.
Oh, what did I missed a whole bunch of comments here. Let's see. Dave says they don't also have to have bodies, so the energy they can accumulate can be a lot stronger than a physical human.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your thoughts? Me too. I agree.
That.
Yeah. And then Wayne said, "Be aware when in Michelle's company, because if she starts humming, shit's about to get real." Just saying.
Apparently I do that. Yeah, I never realized I did that. And my teammates would say, you're humming. And I'm like, and it's usually around the time where something happens. And I'm just like, but I can't even hum now. If I'm humming in the car, it's like, what are you humming for? I don't know. I got a song in my head. There's nothing more than that. It's like, he's looking around. Just looking around. I'm like, this is a thing apparently. Yeah. So,
well, he knows you well, obviously.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So that's a thing.
I knew it was you, Shady D. She's using her other YouTube channel. She said she was popping in to say hi. And then I got a question for you here. She says, I'd love to go have that experience. I guess she's talking about going into the forest.
Yeah, it's Romania. A beautiful experience. We were set to go back before all of this hit. I ended up in the UK and south of France after that, instead of going, I kind of mixed my trips around a little bit. But I'm glad I did now, because I had things to do.
People to see, things to do.
Ghost people to see, yeah. Visiting the spirit folks and, Scotland, and jet setting to the south of France. That's my life.
An interesting place, actually. A friend of mine did a TV series on Amazon, and it was called Hidden Gems in Ireland. And they're filming the second season. I think they're probably done now, in Scotland. And what their theory was with the show was to go to places that aren't so well known, and to tell the story of what really happened there, without all the crazy theatrics of some shows you see people screaming when there's a spirit, or just being really down to earth and documenting it. And they told this really tragic story of this old home. There were still 2 teenage spirits there that had been basically sex trafficked back in the 1600s, I want to say. And it was quite a story. And they didn't go to get evidence either. They're more of historians and telling the story, but they did get quite a bit of activity and things on the series. So I've been tried to get them on, and they were leaving to go to Scotland, so I'm gonna have to have them back on. And Vanessa Hogle and Gwen. Why can I not remember Gwen's last name right now? I see it all the time on Facebook and chit chat, but and I thought, what a unique idea for a TV show, because the paranormal's become more popular, obviously, with all the TV out there. But it's nice to see TV, I believe, that kind of shows you a more realistic view rather than all the theatrics. Like, that's a question I'll ask you. When you're, I would imagine that you're going to say no because you're not actively, like you said, investigating per se. But like you said, you went like to places like over in Europe and whatever. But if you've gone to a place where there's no activity, but it's been purported to have it,
Lots of times.
good. I'm
Realistically,
glad you said that.
yeah, I've done the investigative shows and things like
Mhm.
that. I won't do theatrics at all, which is
No, I
probably why you
couldn't
don't
see
see
you
me
doing
do
it.
a lot of those shows.
Yeah.
But most places are not yet. I can tell you, I've gone to places to film at a very benign location that turned out to not be very benign at all. And once the
Hmm.
cameras were hit, the family just fesses everything up, and you're just like,
Right.
good to know. Thanks for that.
Could
You
have
know,
told us ahead of time.
yeah, well, now
Hmm.
you have a whole other situation to deal with,
Hmm.
right? So, yeah. So, no,
No, but
absolutely not.
I think that's important to show people that, though, that
No.
exactly you just never know. And I know you and I have said the same things before on the panel show. We're not going
Mhm,
to know all the answers until we transition back home ourselves. Because, like you said, you
mhm.
could go even to a place that's very little activity and have a lot, or have expect a lot of activity and it's
That's
quieter.
right. That's
Hmm.
exactly right. It's not like they're gonna just, they're not like
Trained monkeys.
actors or yeah,
Hmm.
okay, we're just gonna freaking act up because I
Hmm.
demand that you do. Like, please. Seriously, did you just seriously say that?
That
It's absolutely
annoys me.
ridiculous.
When you see people say, "Can you turn my flashlight on? Thank you. Can you
You know
turn it
what?
back on again?" Mhm,
Sometimes it's easy. It's easy for spirits to manipulate energy. I've seen people get very creative with some awesome techniques.
mhm.
When you start making demands, however, if you're being
That's what I have the
cordial,
problem with.
absolutely. The spirits
Mhm,
here, there have been people who've come to film here.
mhm,
And we just say, look, if you want to partake, partake. If you don't, don't. We had a
mhm.
film crew here that, they just about lost their freaking minds. They spent the night, there were coins dropping from the ceiling and they're standing there, camera guys, just like, it's like the
Where are
best
those
series.
coming from?
The spirits
Pennies
just must
from
have
heaven.
really liked them. Yeah, because they
Yeah.
came and had a lot of fun.
Mhm,
And the spirits must have just really liked them. And they reported all kinds of stuff going on. They went out
mhm,
for dinner that night, the actors, like the researchers and the crew. And we were
mhm.
here, all this walk around, we're like, oh, it could be a hot night tonight, you know. But they were spirits were just so into it, so
Right.
it does happen, but I
Mhm.
don't think we have the right to go into someone's home,
Exactly.
to investigate and start making demands and stirring things up, and then, oh,
Mhm.
we get to leave, and we leave the family there behind to pick up the
I agree.
pieces.
Mhm. And I've seen that lots. What was
Yeah,
that?
yeah, it was just like a big crack in the next room beside me. So
Was there hello?
I'm
Well,
alone,
I
just for the
will I
record.
will attest to this, you guys. Michelle had this clock behind her. I've seen shadows behind her before, all kinds of things on live panel shows. But you had this, was it a clock? An antique clock
It
with
was
no
an antique
battery or
at the
anything.
time, yeah. Yeah.
And it kept ringing, like dinging, didn't it?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was actually off for 2 years because we
Hmm.
had been filming here prior to the pandemic, and, there were probably 3 shows that filmed here, and, they needed the clocks turned off because they all chimed, and
Hmm.
we never put them back on. We
Yeah.
just forgot about it.
Maybe it was
So,
a reminder because it kept going off during one of the shows and
I
you
know, and
kept
I'm
just
I'm
like,
sitting here going, "There's no way. It's not wound
yeah.
up at all." So,
Yeah, and
you're
it did.
welcome.
You even showed us. Yeah, you even showed us. But you have a
Yes.
family, right? You have a family that like a family, you call them a family of spirits, right?
Yes, right now the lady of the house is here most of the time, but
Mhm,
we have a lot of drive-bys. It's really strange because I've had so many people message me who have seen the house, and like
mhm,
a lot of really gifted people, and they'll say, "Do you know,
mhm,
like your house has no walls?" I'm like, well, that's very possible, which makes it a drop-in place. So we
mhm.
basically, like when Amelia and I will work with energy, we just built walls of energy.
Okay.
Just we literally had to build, and a lot of what I've educated myself to do, which we've incorporated into our work, is working with vibrations and frequencies and altering them to make it more difficult for spirits or entities to enter in, or grounding people, things like that. We've done some pretty amazing things, but it does tend to get drive-bys. We do have like ET presence here also.
Mm-hmm.
The ETs are the one, they're probably here more than the spirits. The spirit lady, she calls them, what does she call them? The little people or something. It's just weird. Like she goes, oh,
Does she?
the little ones are here. Yeah. And we get the tall ones, and when the tall ones come in, she won't, she likes the parlor, but she won't be here. She'll go off to another area.
Does she say why? Does she just not care for them?
I don't know. She doesn't seem bothered by them because she's not stuck here. She's fully ascended, so I don't think it affects her one way or another. One of my pups passed away a couple of years ago, and we hear her all the time. Yeah, congestive heart failure. So, unfortunately, she's like my little peanut. But she's with Margaret, the lady of the house, and I hear her bark a lot. I'm just like, all right, here we go, and she'll be with Margaret. So I'm glad that some kindred spirits and they hang out. We have cats, spirit cats here.
That's what my son told me. My oldest son, he doesn't live here. He's bought his own house and stuff. And he said, Mom, you've got a little black cat, a little kitten here. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. Because both my boys have communicated with animals ever since they've been little. I'm still working on that one. I'd love to be able to do it like they can, but my kids taught me more about it. But the dog, like you just heard her bark, and I don't think a cat is in here, but she'll take off like that, like after something. And I think it's the cat.
Right.
So
that's funny. Nice. It's very possible. We've had people say that they could feel cats rubbing up against their legs and like their calves and stuff. We're just like, probably.
Well, I don't know if Debbie Schmoley's still here or not, but this was years ago. We were talking on a Zoom call, and I swear to God, she's here, she'll vouch for it. We were talking on Skype, and I said to her, did you have a cat that used to lay on the pillow right beside you there? And she said, oh yeah, that was my boo. He passed away about a year ago. And I said, honey, that cat is sitting there right now grooming itself. He's licking his paws, looking at you, flicking its tail. So I took a picture of the screen. No, to me, I can't see it, but she still has the pictures. If she's there, she'll vouch for it. Like our pets stay with us, don't they? They'll visit very often. I've seen so much evidence of that if they choose to still stay, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It just, it's like staying in the car when the car stops working, or even at night when you sleep, sit in your car in the garage, you leave, you go do stuff. It's just like, right?
Well, that's a good analogy. A good analogy.
I just sit in the car at night and park it in the garage. Man, I go, I work, I fly, I do all kinds of things. Apparently I travel a lot. So when ET isn't taking me.
Well, that's interesting. Because when you said that your dad, you found out later in life that he actually had a lot more experiences than you thought. My grandmother on my dad's side, apparently a good French Canadian Catholic family, right? She was pregnant every year for 25 years and had 17 children. God love her.
Yeah.
Anyway, she knew the second that her third eldest son died. She stood up at the table. My dad is kind of like to the middle end of the kids. He was about 12 or 13, and she was from Belgium. And my grandfather, very French accent, and she stood up and was like screaming, oh my God, oh my God. And, his name was Philip. Obviously, my dad was like 12, 13. So I was nowhere around except maybe a gleam in his eye. And as the story goes, my grandfather told her to sit down. You're being ridiculous. He's probably just late for dinner. And I guess what had happened was they used to fix up cars, and my Uncle Philip was in the car ahead, and it was in the 50s. And his friend was behind him, and they were hot rodding. And apparently the door fell open. There was no seatbelt, and his friend ran him over. So his friend knew exactly when it happened. And I think like the time was 6:03. And when the police showed up like an hour and a half, 2 hours later, the friend could say what time it happened. That was the exact time.
Wow, that's crazy. Wow. Wow. So maybe he needs to be moved on.
I don't know. Well, I mean, that was a long, I mean,
I,
this was years and years and years
I
and
think
years
it's
ago.
also the generation. Like my father wouldn't talk about things like that, but as you know, I grew up and he mellowed out a bit, and he'd go, "Oh yeah," he would tell me all of these stories from places that we had been, like friend's cottage. He goes, when his friend died, he goes, you know, we would be down on the lake, and that cottage would have a light on, and he would always leave the radio playing when he went fishing.
Wow.
and and they could hear it, this radio playing, but there was nobody there because they knew the guy had passed. There was nobody
Mm-hmm.
there. And then he would tell us stories about, UFOs and things like that. Oh, we used to see them all the time. My grandparents used to own an island on one of the largest lakes up in northern Ontario. And my grandfather used to go up there for like weeks at a time by himself.
Wow.
Yeah, leave your wife and 6 kids at home alone. I guess go to
His
the
holiday, probably
cottage.
his
Well, they
holiday.
call them, they call them camps up there, right?
Yeah,
So,
we call them camps, not
yeah,
cottages.
that's
Yeah.
right. So
Mhm.
they go to the camp, and he would be up there for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and like he had tons of stories, and so I was just like, it was hard growing up trying to convince you shit was happening.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
no, so I was settling. No, I was settling.
Yeah.
you know. But
Well, my
anyway,
mom doesn't believe in this, but my mom, well, we know Joe's doing that study, right? With
yeah,
RH negative blood, green eyes, red hair.
yeah.
And it's a lot of people I know in the paranormal communities, myself included, had missing time, like blinked and I ended up the car opposite direction, 40 miles
There
away.
you
I don't
go.
even know how I got internet signal, and Dell was calling me where I was only supposed to be gone 3 minutes. And I knew the road, like I literally went, and it was like
I'm
he called
sorry.
me.
Thunder freaking Bay. I've been to Thunder Bay.
Uh-huh.
It's a perfect freaking place for them to come around. Hey. So hell yeah.
Hmm.
you know. If
Well,
anybody
my
thinks
phone
they're not
was
gonna get
ringing.
abducted in Thunder Bay, guess what? You wanna get abducted, go to Thunder Bay.
I was serious because
Oh yeah, me
my
too.
phone was ringing and it was Dell and he's going, "Where are you? You're only supposed to be
I
gone
don't
3 minutes."
know.
I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I
I
said,
don't
just
know for real.
I'll call you
Yeah.
back. I don't know where I
I
am. Yeah,
know it's
exactly.
tough. It's tough. You don't understand unless it's happening to you. That's all. So
Hmm. Yeah. But it's interesting. Most of us that work in this kind of field, I
right.
find more and more of us have these kind of experiences.
My
So,
mother even now will give me experiences about things that are total ET related. My
mhm,
father used to, my grandfather
mhm,
used to own a telescope and used to watch the stars all the time.
mhm.
And my mom would be like, "Oh yeah, like he's had some experiences because he was so fixated on it." I was the same. She goes, "You'd be a child, like 4 or 5, 6, 7, and you'd sit there." And we lived in this valley and the beautiful clear skies, and I would just sit there and wait and watch. She goes, "What are you doing?" So I'm just waiting for a UFO. That freaking hell! What?
That's odd for a kid that
I was a
age.
weirdo even as a kid.
You
I
weren't
know.
weird. I think that that's cool, but it's very advanced for a child of that age to say something like that. It's
It
where I was
just
going with that.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
why I'm thinking the whole attachment thing might have been a stage. Knowing what I know now might have been a stage of the whole abduction process and things like that. Very much could have been.
So let's
Um,
go there because you know what? Like a lot of people, that work in this field, right? They think, when you've been doing it for a while that you're immune to that. It, like you said, yours was generational, but it can really happen. I know you've worked with people that are powerful, but sometimes they get affected by different things, right? Or you can get a bit of an attachment.
oh gosh, I have seen some really, really gifted mediums
Hmm.
end up with
Hmm.
attachments. I've had some really seasoned researchers end
Yeah.
up bringing things home. We've helped a lot of people, especially people in our field because you put yourself out there. I have a lot of people who will just message me and say, here, could you guys take this because this is not what we do. I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely, no problem, because that's what I've done for 20 years. So
Right.
I've never found them difficult, but
Hmm.
they do come with a really high risk, and you have to be really, really careful. Um,
Yeah.
I, I think people who like, you have a lot of people who will allow channeling. I'm not opposed to it if that's your thing and you think you can more than control it. A lot of people say no, we can control it, no problem. Channeling is a form of possession if you're allowing them in and to communicate. So you have to be able to be able to oust them out after the fact, you know. And I had met a woman who got caught, and she used to channel all the time without any problems at all. But all it took was one time with a really strong spirit, and she could not oust him at all. So it does happen. I mean, we're just a vehicle, you know, we're just a vehicle. And there's a lot of discarnate souls, I think, who want to try to get back in. There's a lot of interdimensional beings or dimensional beings that try to get in. You hear cases like this, for example, people in comas for a really long time. And they wake up and you have somebody who has no clue who's around, but they think, oh, it's just the mind isn't right anymore because they've been down for a few months or years or weeks, whatever it is. But meanwhile, it's just like they don't even behave the same. So, you know, maybe a step in, right?
Well, yeah, because for example, I've had some, well, I mean, you could write a whole book about some of the weird stuff that's happened, but two Canadians actually had asked me to connect, you know, and one of them is a very pretty good gifted medium. Her husband does past life regressions and stuff through hypnosis, and mostly to help people, not just for discovery, but to help with like, you know, mental health issues, PTSD, health issues, what have you, physical. So she had said Spirit had asked for them, the two ladies, to contact me just to sort of get information from the other side if there's something we could sort of help with this situation over the last 2 years. Now, the one, and I remember talking to you about this on a panel a little bit. I knew that the spirit they were connecting with wasn't what they said it was, because it was far too persistent and really harassing this one individual in particular. And she was going to channel it. And I could tell that she was not super confident. I said, nope. I said, you need to? Nope. Don't even go there. Don't even go there, because that probably could have turned out very badly. Because if you really are who you say you are and you're in the, I call it back home, there was just too many red flags from seeing negative entities for me to feel that that was something all love and light. Let's put it that way.
It's, you know what, it is really hard for people to understand that there are things out there whose sole purpose is to wait and jump in.
Yep.
And they have all the time in the world to do that. It doesn't have to be like they'll wait you out. And, you know, I mean, I've dealt with people who figure that, you know, that they have pretty benign lives. And I'm just like, well, you know, now you have this issue. You have to think about, let's find the trigger point. Where did things change? You know, have you played around with communication, anything like that? Well, maybe, yeah, when I was this age, but things have been good all this time. But now it's full blown. And I'm just like, well, either you walked into it or you picked it up somewhere. You know, it's really hard if it stems back, or they'll say, oh, yes, I've had experiences my whole life. No matter where I moved, there was a problem. Well, it's because you probably have an attachment, or you're a haunted person, as they call them, you know. But I think when you start reaching out for communication, you have to be really careful, because it's not just a Ouija board. The Ouija board gets a pretty bad rap, but it's also something that's made available to children. But then again, so are tape recorders, so are telephone apps, pendulums. Really, it's not hard to get a hold of these things. You can take a necklace to do it. Like, it doesn't take anything. Any form of communication, it literally is an invitation. If you're putting it out there, it doesn't matter which avenue you're using, you are making an invitation. And in doing so, you have to be prepared for the risks.
I think that they don't think about that at all, or you know, energy preparation before. Like, I will guarantee, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, you just don't walk into something and say, yep, okay, here I am. There's certain things that you have to do to kind of prepare yourself energetically, your space, whatever it may be. At least that's, I know how I work. And most people I know that you know, some of the experiences we've talked about tonight barely scratch the surface, but
Yes.
you need to do that. And then there's a process to when you're ending it as well. Because I've met people who have said, well, I told it wasn't allowed to follow me. Yeah,
They
well,
don't
you can tell
care.
them that, but
They
yeah, that's
don't
exactly
care.
that. Thank you. Like I
No.
care, dude, is basically what they're going to
Yeah.
say if they really want to go there.
Right.
So
Yeah. Batten down the hatches. They don't care. They don't listen
mm-hmm.
on an average. A good spirit will always listen. But if they
Oh,
don't
good
listen,
spirit.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have to, if they don't listen and you have issues, you have to ask yourself, you know, what were you really communicating with?
That you just hit the nail on the head with what I was trying to say a few minutes ago by that spirit being very persistent with
Mm-hmm.
this individual and just incessantly
Yes.
wanting to communicate. To me, right there, that's a red flag
Mm-hmm.
because you already were human, or you were, because it was somebody apparently that was a little bit more famous. And to me, you know, you run into good spirits. You know, they're going to treat you like a good people are. They're going to be, you know what I mean. They're not going to be assholes. That's what the term I can use. But if they're
Right.
mm-hmm.
No, it's true.
Yes.
Yeah, it absolutely is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Careful what you wish for. You just might get it.
Oh yeah, how many I've met too that I've never been touched. I've never been anything. I just would love to have an experience. So I say, don't be careful what you wish for
Sometimes
because
you have experiences and you don't acknowledge them because, you know, we live in a really, most people have very busy lives. You know, you work your jobs, you have your families, I don't know about you, but I'm always freaking running, always. And
all the time. I'm busier now than when I had 3 jobs as a nurse.
oh
No.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you run all the time. So the example I
Mm-hmm.
like to use is leaving a glass on the table and just heading out the door. You come home.
Oh.
Oh yeah, I left the glass on the table. What happens
Mm-hmm.
if the glass is moved? Will you have enough I guess go ahead to
Wherewithal.
just to look at it and go, wait a minute, I did not leave the glass here. I left the glass
Mm-hmm.
over here at this end of the table. Most people won't. Most people go, oh yeah, that's right. I left the glass on the table. I forgot to put it away this morning. They don't really think about the fact that the glass has moved and potentially they have a problem, or that they've got company. Anyway, not all
Mm-hmm.
company is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So do we pay enough attention to detail in our surroundings of day-to-day
Mm-hmm.
life? A lot of people don't. We're just too
I
busy.
agree. I agree.
You know, sometimes you
You
don't
know
know it
who
hit
taught
you
me
until
that?
it's run you over. So
Was Dell. When I first started hanging out with Dell, we were just friends, and he started telling me everything he noticed when we went into a room, and I went, "Oh my God, it must be exhausting to live in your." And I went, "Oh, you've always thought that way." He will notice these smallest little details that nobody notices, but it's important, like you said. And with living with him all these years, I'm finally starting to learn and train myself because, for example, just quickly, our neighbor that we just love, her car wasn't working and the rad needed to be flushed. I guess she went and switched her car with her mom's car. They're almost identical.
mm,
And Dell came out to help her if she'd need some help, and we hadn't even knocked on the door. And he goes, "That's not her car." I go, "Yeah, it is." He goes, "Oh no, there's a little tiny sticker on the back there that no, that's not there." And you know what made me realize? I had looked at the license plate, and for me, when I saw the license plate, I knew. But that's what I'm saying: little tiny sticker,
little
nobody would
things.
notice.
No,
But that's
it's true.
important, right?
Well, I mean, it is if you've got things going on or if you're questioning your sanity, something's going on in the
True.
house and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I was sure this was a thing, or did I hear something? Like, honestly, we hear things around here all the time. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
always looking around, you know.
I've heard a
Um,
few things while you've been talking.
I know. No, I know. I know things. I don't know. People say they'll pick up things. Sometimes they'll listen to the archives of our shows and they'll be just like, I heard a voice in and around this point, and they'll tell me, you need to go back and listen. There's something there. I'm like, oh, I know. I know there
I
is.
know all about it.
No doubt about it. But I'm glad you got the experience. And so, you know, that's all part of it. We're quite comfortable here. So
So now, do you think that this family, or I'm calling them family, but family of spirits that are in your home, do you think they came with with the land, or is it maybe did they come because you also collect beautiful pieces from history as well too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No, the family were the people who built this house. This house is an 1872 Gothic Revival manor house, and the family was one of the influential families in the area. And the
Mm-hmm.
house is built for her to entertain in.
Ah.
Oh yeah, and just we'd find little tickets to garden parties and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
Wayne's out there, the metal detector, finding little things from garden
Uh,
parties and these teeny
yeah.
little fancy salt and pepper shakers and just all kinds of crazy things. He found a thimble one time in the old cistern in the basement. It was a great story. And he had it in his hand and it
Mm-hmm.
disappeared right out of his hand. It's just like, yeah, no way. Was he allowed to keep it? Yeah, it's nuts. I know. He goes, it
Wow.
was in my hand. It was like, wow. And he's not one to embellish because he's very skeptical on a lot of different levels.
Is that
But
funny? We're both with skeptical guys,
I
like
know
even after
he's
everything they've
very,
been through and
no,
experienced.
yeah, no. He's just, you can take everything with a grain of salt, and that's pretty much how it goes here. But there's just a lot more that goes on here. Like I said, I think most of it now is just ET. She's really good with any of it. So
Interesting. Now, what about your pets? Do you find your pets react a lot, or
Chihuahuas, they react at
I
everything.
knew you were gonna say
Everything. I know. They're these teeny little things that are just like,
that.
you know. Yes, they're it's funny because the one that passed would seem to be the most intuitive. Like she would react to everything. These
Mm-hmm.
guys just I think they're just so used to it. They just don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would have to be something pretty threatening for them to even really pay
I hear you.
attention. Yeah. I mean, they sleep like rocks, like they have this huge, because they're so tiny. The house is
Yeah.
under restoration in some rooms. So there's this huge doggy playpen, big, massive thing that's out in one of the rooms.
Yeah.
And so they just stay in there because one, she's blind, she can't see. So she
Oh.
stays within her perimeter. The other one is just like, it doesn't matter. You can let her run around, but for her, there's imaginary doors and walls. She'll only stay within a little perimeter. It's just weird.
Yeah.
So they're all rescue. So you don't know their history, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, but she loves being in there. And the newest one, well, she's just like, whatever. I just want to be with my sisters because I'm a sketch bag, so I'm not moving anyway. But
Yeah.
anyway, they just they lay down. You can see them every now and then, though,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't really react. I think anything here, something malevolent comes in. It's just like it does, when it comes in, not hard to pop out of there. But ET doesn't bother any of us. Like we're all very,
Oh,
very
that's
comfortable
good.
with them. No, we're really
Mm-hmm.
comfortable. It's at a point where the house is so big and we just don't use it all.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as we found out by these specific ones that they didn't really like the LED lights, we literally just blocked off a good chunk of the house that we don't use. It's dark all the time. They roam
Mm-hmm.
around. It's always knocking. And sometimes they're just like knock crap around. I'm like, just enough already.
Settle
Yeah,
down up there.
I know. It's like having kids. So turn it down. It's just
Yeah.
stuff like that. But we also have an old antique square grand piano, and
Oh.
every now and then they'll hit a key, and I'll just be sitting there and I'll hear boom, and it just resonates out, and I'm just sitting there going, it's just like beside me, and I'm just like, there've been times on the
Okay.
show I'm sitting here, and it amazes me that nobody ever says, I think I just heard that, because every now and then it's like one key will go, and I'm just like, just,
Your invisible co-host.
I know, pretty much, yeah. It's like, all right, whatever, but I don't know.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
Well, the
it's
one.
good times.
Well, yeah, but like I say, it always fascinates me. Now, do you have any haunted items that you know specifically are haunted that you collect at all, or just antiques? Excuse me.
Well, I mean, I've got pieces that are like, a couple 100+ years old. I think the oldest piece I probably own, like, even my furniture might be like a medieval revival, which is a 200-year-old replica of a medieval
Wow.
piece. But the oldest piece I have is actually a human skull, which
Mm-hmm.
is probably about 600+ years old. It
Mm-hmm.
came from the St. Elizabeth's flood of 1425 in Europe, and the person
Wow.
drowned. It was submerged for about 100 years. It still has sediment inside of it. And,
Oh.
and it's cool because it came from this little old lady's collection out of England. She had hundreds of them. And when she passed, the family had to dispose of all these. So
Oh,
all
poor
of
family.
yeah, I do have very unusual pieces. I do
Mm-hmm.
have taxidermy and human skulls, skeletons, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all old. They're all
Mm-hmm.
documented, so now I can go dig them up, people. They're all documented,
Right.
and a lot of things get offered to me. But the very first piece that ever came to me that was haunted was a skull. It's called a phantom skull, and it came from a university,
Okay.
one of the Germanic countries, and I
Okay.
was working with a family on clearing the house, and he goes, it acts up all the time. I said, but he also had a Russian military collection, and I'm like, but it doesn't like it. You have to take it off. His big heavy helmet on it. It doesn't like it. Because I don't
Mm-hmm.
care, man. It just wakes me up. Just take it out of here. So it sat on my desk with me forever,
Mm-hmm.
and I just put a little baseball cap on him. I'd be working, it behaved just fine. I've never had to bind him. I've never had to remove the energy from it.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing that's stuck. You know, I think a lot of it is like more residual than anything because I don't let spirits stay trapped in items. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a thing for me personally.
Mm-mm.
I've had other researchers, message me and say, can you take this item because this family doesn't want it? I'm like, just pull the spirit out.
Mm-hmm.
So, you do,
Mm-hmm.
problem is solved. But sometimes the people just don't want to look at it after that. They just didn't have a good experience with it. So
Mm-hmm.
I usually, put things in storage for a year or two. And if they don't ask for it back, then it's like, okay, well, there's no more spirit in it. If you don't want it, then it's just either going to it usually goes to Habitat for Humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Once I know that's completely clear and it hasn't done anything in a couple of years, we know nothing
Right.
is there. That way it gets donated and it goes to someplace, you know, aside
That's interesting that and I agree with every word you've said about clearing the spirit, because I know many people, not many, but I do know people that collect haunted items. And I've asked them why. And they said because, nobody else wanted it. They didn't want what was contained within to be released, were their words. So that's why they're
from.
keeping it safe. But I've also experienced things on camera watching, like for one of them was excuse me, apparently a cross that was used in an exorcism, but it broke.
Hmm.
And so they had the cross, and that was some crazy stuff that happened with that.
Hmm.
Or they had a bunch of haunted dolls, and the one in particular I'm thinking of had a painted face, and it would be on camera, and I swear to God to you, that thing would be blinking. It would smile. It would
Oh, I believe it.
move. Mm-hmm.
They're like
All
little
kind.
people frozen in time.
There you go. Perfect.
Not a
Perfect
fan.
saying right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not a fan personally, but
I'm not a
but
fan of them
no,
either.
no. I mean, I think you have some pieces that if you have certain entities that are attracted to it,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's almost like you remove one, there's nothing stopping another from coming into it. There are some
True.
pieces that do need to be kept under lock and key. I've not ended up with any pieces that had anything malevolent attached. They just had spirits attached, spirits that were unhappy,
Mm-hmm.
spirits that didn't want to have, that wanted to be acknowledged, caused a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of havoc. But yeah, it's not uncommon if a spirit attached to something that may belong to them either. They don't care about that once you move them over. They really don't.
So, okay, I got a thought for you here. I'd love to hear your theory on when you said there's some things that need to be kept under lock and key. And we know of many pieces I've heard
Well,
of
you
that.
just made mention of one for sure, the cross.
Hmm. So, what do you think? What would be the reasoning for that? Would it be the energy, do you think? Or what's your thoughts on, like, is it a portal item? Like, just interested to hear what your thoughts are, why it would
Well,
be that way, that you can't clear it, you can't.
portals can be closed, no problem. You know, some people believe, oh no, you can close it, but you can never remove it. It can reopen in time. No, you can move it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, we've done that without any issues at all. It's really not that difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But so I don't worry too much about that. Human spirits,
Mm-hmm.
I don't worry about. Once you move them over, you move them over. But the example you gave is a perfect example. The item used in an exorcist, it
Mm-hmm.
broke. You know, it has that type of energy. Can you remove the energy? Yes, I believe you can. But because it was used in an exorcism, would it attract something else? Is it kind of
Right.
marked in a way? You know, um, you just don't take chances with pieces like that. You just keep them
Mm-hmm.
under lock and key. You know,
I hear you.
that's just how I personally,
Or
you
like
know,
I was
feel
thinking of
about it.
that doll, like that Annabelle doll or whatever.
Oh,
you know.
Annabelle's a piece of work. I've met Annabelle. She's yeah, she's pretty active. So that's
Mhm.
definitely something that they keep under lock and key.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to. You don't want people handling her.
I'm just wondering why though. Like, just curious. Like, what's your thought when I just threw out some ideas? Like, or is it just the energy? As Odell's awake now.
Oh,
He's
Dybbuk
watching the show.
boxes. Yeah, I know, Dybbuk
Yeah.
boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would probably not be a good idea just to keep that under
Mm-hmm.
lock and key too. We almost have to talk to Tony Spira about that with
Mm-hmm.
Annabelle. I don't know if they ever tried to get rid of it. You know,
I've heard enough stories about what happened though for people that had it before,
that's
and
yeah, that's just it. You know what? You just have to. Some things you just keep under lock and key. They're safe that way. I know with Annabelle, I mean, Ed Warren had arranged to have a priest come in there, like I think, like regular on a regular basis, just to
yeah.
bless the museum. It's a crazy place. It was just wild. I actually bought a piece that belonged to Ed Warren. It's a
Wow.
Tibetan goat's head. They're very very
Interesting.
ornate. Oh yeah, very very ornate. Um, you know, and that was after his passing and Lorraine's passing, and I got it from his
Mm-hmm.
daughter Judy. So it just sits in the case with everything else. You know, it didn't have any
Mm-hmm.
wonky energy attached to it. You know, if anything, it would have had pleasant and energy from their travels when they bought it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's nice to have a memento because I respected them both so much.
And the history, piece of
Oh,
history.
of
Mm-hmm.
course, yeah, yeah. I'm
They
just the
were
next
beautiful
caretaker
people.
for a little while. You know.
Oh, I just love what you just said there. I really like that. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful way to look
Thing
at it.
things move on, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
had a very questionable, collection. It was
Mm-hmm.
very things come to me. I looked at when I purchased this collection, it was a series of photographs from the
Mm-hmm.
Holocaust that were
Oh.
no, they really, really bad, and basically, I knew when I got it, I would only be a caretaker for a little while until I met the next person who I felt it belonged with. And I made arrangements. I fired it overseas and I went, you're the next person to have this. And now it looks
Mm-hmm.
like it may very well end up in a Holocaust museum. Because apparently it was a very popular collection, but these were not typical photos. These came out of a physician's personal
Oh.
collection. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to go now where they belong. So you see, sometimes we're only meant to have something for a very short amount of time.
Oh, thank you, Shannon said. I know we aren't at the end of the show yet, but the show has been amazing.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
It's
Thank
because of
you.
our guests. I could talk to Michelle for hours. She's so
Thank you.
interesting.
I try.
So,
I try.
well, we just love you so much. So, I guess I want to ask you because you have been all over the world. So, I know people love to hear about these kind of things. Has there been some other obviously every place has been memorable in some way or another, but like the remaining forest, have you found other places around the world to be as fascinating or interesting or active even?
Yeah, for me, I go to places obviously that have meaning. My
Mhm.
trip to Scotland and
Excuse me.
the south of France actually came at the persistence of my deceased grandfather, who
Oh.
kept coming through communication saying, "Got to go to France." I'm like, even before I went to Romania, so I'm going to Romania. It goes, "You're not going to France?" No, I'm not going to France, Grandpa. He comes with the box, right? The spirit box. But I'm not going to
Yeah.
freaking France right now, Grandpa. You know?
Yeah.
And he started talking to me about my bloodline. And all of a sudden on my PVR, shows would start showing up, and I'd be like, hey, who filmed this? Can I erase this? We're like, we can put it there. I'm just like, I know exactly who put it there.
Who
So
put
I'd
it
watch
there?
it,
Yeah.
right? And it put me on my path to family lineage, which was mind blowing, just mind blowing. So my trip to Scotland and south of France was to appease my grandfather, but it was also like one of my medium friends really, really was the deciding factor, because she was reading somebody else. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff from me started coming out and had nothing to do with me, this person. And she goes, you need to come here and sit with me because I have some mind blowing information. Like, your grandfather won't leave me alone. I'm just like, all right, whatever. So I went and sat down, and all the information she gave me, I went, no, I understand. I know exactly where I have to go. And one of these places, which ended up being Rennes Chateau in the south of France, people be familiar with it from the Da Vinci Code. But
Okay.
but if you've never really actually been there, it's actually pretty high up, and it's kind of hard to traverse through, in inclement weather. And here's my grandfather coming through the ghost box, saying, don't go in the winter. It'll be too hard because you want to go in the summer. So it's easier to get here, here, and here. I'm like, I'm not freaking Indiana Jones, Grandpa. I'm not doing that. It was just stuff like that. And he goes, no, you got to make it over here, get down into the lower level. No, I'm not making it down to any level because, so it was just an ongoing thing. But that was my last overseas trip before the pandemic. And every place I've been to has come from either a bucket list thing or a past life thing or a just part of my personal journey. I've been to Egypt, and I've had unbelievable experiences there. I've been to Greece. I've spent time in, on Santorini. I've spent time in Athens and other places around. I've been to northern France, and I should have really had more time. I would have gone to part of where my family came from, which was Normandy, and in through Alpes-Lorraine, places like that. And I enjoyed the south of France technically a lot more. It's just a whole different land down there. It's like time stands very still. You just go through some of these country roads. You see castles everywhere. It's just unbelievable. So I've been really fortunate to be able to go to some incredible places. They're all haunted.
Yeah.
And we stayed in this little town in south of France called Malve, which is Malve. There's only 800 people there. And the building we stayed in was actually all redone in Europe. There's a lot of hostels, and hostels are like amazing hotels here, but they're called hostels in Europe. And it shared a courtyard with a castle. Wow. The whole town, remember, there's only 800 people. The whole town saved up, bought the castle. And when I was there, they were having it all restored, and they found the most well-preserved collection of Renaissance art in all of France. And they had people from the Louvre there, and they were actually photographing, preserving, documenting. So they were showing me photos of this beautiful artwork. It was just like, and this is just one of many castles in the area. So, it's just, I don't know. I don't go unless I don't love it. The Highlands in Scotland, you want to talk like fairyland? Oh my God. The fairy circles, everything throughout the Highlands. We were looking at one stone fairy circle where you would leave an offering, and the Fairy King's Grotto, which was like the stone building on the top, was just up at the top. And my son was with me, and I'm like, I need to know what's in the grotto. And he's looking at me like, take one for the team, man. Go see what's in the grotto. This kid's athletic, right? So he's like in his early 20s, right? He's like, okay, yeah. I'm like, hey, just get up there. He bolts it like up this big hill. All I see is his freaking back end hanging out of this big grotto. I'm like, yeah, what's in it? It's like, so you just throw your kid in there. You don't know what's in there. So, he was an adult in all fairness.
I got him to adulthood is what I'd be thinking.
I know, right? Exactly. For sure. But yeah.
But there's magic in all these places with that much history, because I went on a retreat with a group I used to do quite a bit of stuff with on Facebook. And it was in Colorado. It was I forget the name, the Love Something Ranch or something. It was in Colorado. And it was well known, kind of hippie, organic type stuff. They had all kinds of ET stuff, by the way. Holy crap at night, like just crazy. But we'd gone around the back, we were exploring, and there was this garden, and it looked like a fairy garden. And it was so cool because it was all these rocks and it was all natural. So there was nothing fake about it, but you could tell it looked like just the energy of it. And the whole thing, it had just rained, and it was all covered in this fine, beautiful spider web, except around the back, it looked like a mushroom house. You went around the back and you had to look really close. There was a little hole and it went right inside. So I forget whose idea it was, but we decided we would bring them a crystal. I kid you not. Holy crap. That was oh my God. So we bring this quartz crystal point, and as we go to put it into the hole, we never saw anything. Something went and just sucked it right in there, just sucked it in. It was so crazy. And I remember saying to the person that said, good thing you noticed that hole, because we didn't want to disturb the spider web. It was like they had cleared it away. They knew the crystal was coming. So, but yeah, the energy there, like you said, in the Highlands and
everywhere it's got its own energy. So I see Dell's comment. Yes, I would go to both. Antarctica.
And Greenland.
Absolutely Antarctica, especially right now. And
if
Greenland,
we could get in there.
Absolutely. Exactly.
I want to know. I want to know what they saw. Well, actually, I had a friend on, Dan. Have you had Dan Willis on before ever?
I don't know.
Dan? Okay, he used to work for ABC News. He used to work with Marcel Vogel. He actually him and his wife gave each other, as a wedding present, real Vogel crystals. There's only one person in the world that knows how to cut those, because Marcel Vogel's dead. So speaking of history, he's gone back to 1900 and connected all the dots where things have been changed in history. And he worked in the Navy. And he was one of a handful, about 20 something scientists. May 6, 2002, they were testifying, I think, at the New York Press Club in front of Congress to the existence of extraterrestrials, 56 different types at that time. He said it should have been world news event. And what did they get at the end of it? Like a 10-second little blurb of, some people think that ETs exist.
Of course, that's how they want to hide it, right? But you want to see what's in Antarctica? Remote view it. That's all I'm going to say.
Experience. What's that?
Want to see what's in Antarctica? Remote view it.
Oh, because that's my whole story of that was, that's where he had his experience on the bow of one of the Navy ships. They saw something coming out of the water in the Antarctica. So there you go. Remote view it. Now that's a good idea. Really good idea.
We'll leave that right there.
Well, Dave has a question for you. So he says, Dave Petrelli says, I apologize, but you can read it. It says, if you've already answered this question, did everyone in your group hear the drone in the forest? Oh, no, you did ask that, Dave. Sorry, we missed it. So that droning noise in the forest in Romania, could everybody hear that?
Everybody could hear it. It wasn't a being tuned in thing, because we're all tuned in, except for the skeptical guy, but he heard it too. Even skeptical people are tuned in. I think a lot of them are tuned in, and they just don't want it. They just will go to the logical side too. We did as well. I mean, but it was there the entire time and did not relent one time. In fact, like in some of the recordings that the girls got, because all the equipment got zapped right away. We were down to like just an old iPhone 4 was all we had left at that point. And then I had my iPhone at that point. And she recorded, and at that point you could hear the droning in the back. It was very faint, but it was definitely there. It's something that's often reported. It's like a let's see if I can replicate it. It was a little bit like a
that's what I was going to say. I can almost hear it.
Humming.
I can almost hear it. Yeah.
That's pretty much what it sounded like. It was just very constant in the background.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So that's, it was interesting for sure. You start, realistically, you get so used to it that you don't even think about it. but it's sort of like at first I'm just like, God, it's the most annoying freaking thing because it's always in the background. It's almost like you're being brainwashed into something. Maybe you are, I don't know, but
Maybe you are.
yeah, because
You
you
never
become so
know.
conditioned to listening to it after, like your first hour there, lulled me to sleep.
Well, it's almost hypnotic in a way,
It
but
is, yeah,
you would
it is.
notice it because when you're out in wilderness, like you said, you notice there's no birds, but there was insects, there was no animals, and then you're hearing this repetitive droning noise. Like, yeah, and then like you said, eventually you could tune it out, but it would be so noticeable because
Hmm.
you wouldn't hear that normally there, would you?
No, not at all.
Okay, so this person, I guess we got 2 minutes left quickly. So this would be, I guess, our last question. It says Michelle, I think they meant. So I was
Yes,
wondering, there's a terrifying forest, and just for people that are listening and reading this, there's a
yes.
real terrifying forest just outside my town, and I'm wondering why it's so scary or why it just creeps everyone out.
Where you're located.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah,
Just
no.
quickly, if you could
I
tell us.
mean, there are haunted forests all over the world.
Mhm,
A lot of the missing 411 that go in the national parks, throughout Canada, the United
mhm.
States. I think what makes forests so interesting is that there are cave systems in a lot of the really dense
Yes.
forests. It's pretty much untouched. There's no building going on in a lot
Mhm.
of these forests. Things are left alone, so things can just be things to be quiet. Bigfoot. Oh, Oklahoma. Yeah, I'm not sure. I did a whole thing on haunted forests actually on the gray zone. I'd have to go back and look at my notes,
Okay.
but there's all kinds of places throughout the United States. Even the national parks are
Oh, yeah.
crazy freaking like haunted, but they also have a lot of cryptids, and so there's a belief that there's a
Yes.
lot of portals in there. Some people would be like, well, Bigfoot. Well, some people believe they're dimensional beings. Other people believe they're extraterrestrial beings. But it's
Mhm.
like some people are like, no, they're just like a forgotten species. It could be a yes to all. Um,
Yeah.
we don't know that they're not just slipping into the entranceway of a cave system. But there have been people who have heard sounds, like it sounds like it could be a portal, like just like that sound, just out of nowhere, and it's just all of a sudden it's like they're running, and gone. And you're looking around. They go to the spot. There's no real way he could have just dropped off. Thank you, Del.
Mhm. Thank you,
you
Dell.
yeah, there's no real way it could have just dropped off. So you almost have to
Mhm,
look at other options. Either that they have a way of just popping off and thanks, Dave. um,
mhm,
but it's like a Loch Ness monster. People have dragged that
mhm.
lock forever, Nessie, saying
Yep.
there's no way this lock could sustain an animal this big. So is it
Mhm.
just going in and out of a portal? Because it's been going on for almost 100 years. It's like,
And Norway has one
same.
too. I've watched
Lake
documentaries on that.
Champlain,
Yeah.
us too,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. Mhm.
Ogopogo.
Yep.
They're all over the place. Lake Ontario is said to have one. We know there's
Mhm.
portals there. We know there's a triangle there. We know there's an underwater base there.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. I think forests tend to be the same in any of my research. People send me in a lot of stories, and I do. I don't know. I personally find a lot of solace in the forest. It's a great place to
Mhm.
go grounding. It's a great place to spend time in. Trees have their own language. Believe it or not, they do. They
Absolutely. Yes.
communicate through the roots. They'll
Mhm.
they'll ground you. Um, but it's also a place where you'll find little people, you'll find cryptids,
Mhm.
you'll find a lot of
We
folklore.
didn't even go there. I hope you'll come back on because I'd love
Absolutely.
to talk about. I could talk to you
Absolutely.
all night. Looks like
I know.
everybody loved it in the
Absolutely.
audience. And how could you not? Well, we've run out of time here. So
Yes.
tell people where to find you, Michelle. Like I said, I'd love to have you back on because so many things I wanted to talk about. What color nail polish are you using?
This is actually navy blue. Navy blue. It's got little butterflies on it.
There you go. Okay, so where can they find you, Michelle?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty much all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't, I have to say social media, I have a difficult time getting to people who message me there, because there's several group pages that I'm on, and just my personal is overrun. Same with Instagram. I do apologize. I'm not being a snot, but you can always go to michelledesrochers.com, drop me an email, or you can find us on Wednesday and Thursday nights on The Outer Realm with myself and Amelia
Yes.
Pisano every Wednesday and Thursday night, 9 to 11 Central, 8 to 10. Oh, no, 9 to 11 Eastern, 8 to 10 Central. And, you can message me at theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. And on the Gray Zone Uncensored, 6 to 8 Eastern, 5 to 7 Central, every Saturday night with Joe Montaldo.
Thank you so much. I've been wanting to do this for so long with you, and I knew we were going to have a great time. Next time we're going to have to talk all about cryptids and
We
all this stuff.
can. Oh,
yes,
yeah.
it was.
Yeah. Wealth of information. Happy to oblige.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Wayne and Dave. And we have Josh and we had Debbie. We had a whole bunch of the Dell. Thank you guys for tuning in that we could see. If I missed your comments, I apologize because we don't always see them here on StreamYard. We see many, but I know on my Facebook profile, we may not see them. I will be back next Monday on same time, same space here at the Angel Rock. I have Chris Matthew from Forbidden Knowledge News Network coming on. And if you ever want to get a hold of me very quickly, you can get a hold of me on facebook.com/The Angel Rock. You ever want to book a reading? I do mentoring and I do a lot of healing work too. So I'd love to connect with you. Michelle, thank you again. This went by way too quick.
It did. It was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Be sure to check out Michelle and Amelia's show and Michelle and Joe's show on Saturday, as my eyes are watering. Anyways, everybody have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you may be. Sending you lots of love and light, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same space. Bye.